Hey guys, Dave here. Welcome to another video. Thank you for watching as always. Today I'll be going over a few recent interviews that have been done by Peter Beck, Adam Spice, and a few other Rocket Lab executives to see what kind of nuggets we can glean from them, maybe get an advantage and think more deeply about our investment, and I'll share my thoughts on what they say as well. Do let me know, of course, down below in the comments what you think about anything they say, or if there's any other interviews out there that have come out recently that I've missed. I'm always interested to hear. I really do find that if you get a very deep knowledge on a small number of companies, I think you can do better than trying to go broad and having a more shallow level of knowledge on a wider amount of companies. So that's why I like to dive really deep on the companies that I do follow closely. I think it really does give me an edge. If you're new here and you haven't yet subscribed, any new subscriber would be very much appreciated. And to the current subscribers, thank you so much for continuing to watch. Much appreciated. Okay, with that out of the way, let's dive into Rocket Lab's interview roundup. Okay, we're starting out with Sharesies, which is a Kiwi-based publication, and I do encourage you to check out the full videos to all these interviews. I'll link them down below, not trying to steal any of their views or contents, just take a few bits of it, and there's definitely a lot more valuable info in these great interviews if you want to watch them in their entirety. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a listen to what Peter and the gang had to say to Sharesies.
The location, because it's sort of difficult place to get to.
Yep.
But well known, a NASA site. So what makes this a great site for the Neutron launch pad?
In America, you've got really two launch sites on the East Coast. You've got Cape Canaveral, which everybody is aware of, and is a super famous place, and then you have Wallops Island, Virginia, where we are. Now the Cape is an incredible launch site, but it's very busy. And we're trying to stand up a high cadence launch vehicle. So it's much more difficult to come here because, as you can see, we've had to build so much infrastructure, whereas the Cape, there's so much existing infrastructure there. But the advantage with that is that we're it. And we're really pushing for a high cadence, so we don't have to wait in line for anybody. And
we're pretty close to
Yeah, it's true. Rocket Lab is kind of it right now for Wallops, other than a few sounding launches. Firefly is trying to move in as well. I believe I've heard about maybe Relativity or one other. I'll have to remember or look it up later. But yeah, right now Rocket Lab is kind of like the main launcher from the site. So yeah, it's kind of, they get priority, I guess, as opposed to fighting for launch slots out of the Cape.
Launch pads, they're expensive, clearly. Massive projects. Presumably you don't want a whole lot of them. Is there more in the pipeline, or?
Oh, not for now. I mean, this the Wallops side is really cool because it gives us all that sort of mid-inclination stuff. We can do a dog leg, which is a maneuver to do a sun-synchronous launch. But at some point in time, we'll need to expand into other inclinations. But right now we can service a tremendous portion of the market out of this pad.
One of the things that was announced by the governor was that we're expecting a launch by Christmas.
Before the end of this year, we will all gather and we will watch the first Neutron rocket lift off from Pad 0D right here together.
And the governor's...
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I wouldn't take the governor's comments, as set in stone. I think they're more like political hype and stuff like that. So yeah, some people read that as an announcement that yes, 100% Rocket Lab will launch by the end of the year. Personally, I wouldn't say that's the case, but let's listen to what Peter has to say about it.
I think he said that he would bring the Christmas presents if it was on Christmas Day. How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, look, I mean, we're pushing to get one down and out by the end of the year. That's been the goal. It's a green light program schedule, and we're going to try as hard as we can. But at the end of the day, we always caveat it with it's a rocket program, right? So we've got a couple of really big tests to go. If they go well, then we'll be in good shape. If they don't, then it'll be less good shape. But the reality is, like, for a 30-40 year launch vehicle program, a few months here and there is totally irrelevant. So we're all shooting for a date, but if it's we're not going to put something on the pad that's not perfect, and we're not going to put something on the pad that's not ready to fly for some arbitrary date. In the life cycle of the program, it's irrelevant.
And the pace of delivery so far has been immense, right?
Oh, it's insane.
Okay, so yeah, pretty similar language to what we've heard before from him, like on the earnings call and stuff like that. So once again, I don't think it's a lock to launch by the end of the year. I'm starting to lean toward, we're definitely talking either December or, the first 3 months of next year. Q1. I don't think we're talking November a launch. So let's all cross our fingers that those tests he was talking about go well. We have heard that large pieces of Neutron, large Neutron parts are being delivered. I think it's like October-ish. Have to go back and re-listen to some of these other interviews. Maybe we'll hear it here. So, I mean, if that's the case, there's still a bunch of assembly and testing to go. Keep that in mind.
It's totally insane.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the most recent rocket developed, it was $7 billion in like 10 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And like, you know, the whole program for Neutron, including all this launch site, is $350 million, and we're 4 years. So it's crazy.
Been with the company for a while, started around 11 years ago. I was working on the previous program, which is called Electron, and was really responsible for standing up that whole launch organization, right from selecting the early launch sites, building those out, building the teams that operate the launches, and then really, got Electron running from an operational and test and mission operations standpoint. In the last 3 years, got asked by Pete to lead the Neutron development program. Another opportunity to go build a rocket, taking all the lessons learned from the past. So couldn't pass that up.
Right from the start, the hype around this project has been very, very.
Didn't realize Sean had such a long history with Electron. Actually, I love that. It's great. So yeah, he's not, someone new to the company coming in to lead Neutron's development. He was there for Electron, and you just love to see the promotion from within. At least I do.
Large. The ambition for the timeline probably equally as large. Mm-hmm. Like what's your true feeling on that? Like, when do you get confident that this is actually going into space, and how far away do you think that is from like sort of being quite solid on that timeline?
Yeah, I think the confidence building for a rocket program is just continuous. Right. There's never one specific thing, and then you're, at least from my point of view, there isn't just one thing you do and you say it's going to be good. You have to be in this constant sense of paranoia, and you constantly have to be on edge to just keep building confidence and retiring risk. Very complex machine, and it doesn't take much for it to go wrong. So every part of the way, every test we do, every integration activity, just raises that confidence, and you just have to constantly keep doing that till you're flying, till the second you're flying. Yeah. And then once you start flying too, this confidence built in flying over and over again. There are some things you can never detect on the ground as much as you try to test. So it's equally important that once we're flying, we're learning from every flight and moving that forward as well.
How many Neutrons are there in progress at the moment?
So right now we're already building flight 2. So build number 2 is started. And in some cases, we even have parts on the floor for the third Neutron being built. Our goal is to build 3 next year. So we're going from 1 this year, 3 next year, 5 the year after that. So it's a pretty steep curve, but
it's interesting. Just thinking about it, I know we've obviously all heard the 135 launch cadence many times, but I guess we never had confirmation really whether that's, building 5 vehicles in that year, or if they see themselves reusing one of the first stages by that third year. So it sounds like they'll be building, assuming he's talking about the first stage here, not just the second stage, 5 full Neutrons in a couple years' time, which sounds great to me. Guess we'll really have to see how fast they nail that reusability, though, to see how fast Cadence can really ramp beyond that.
We've invested in all the production infrastructure we need, so they'll just keep producing. And while the first one's being built, I expect the second one to be halfway built.
And if you were an investor in Rocket Lab, how would you be thinking about this opportunity?
Immense potential, right? I think we're just about to get started. So we've seen a lot of growth already, and then we're about to embark on this really, next big phase of the company with this multi-ton rocket capable to go to orbit, our own space applications. There's a lot of, exciting future ahead of us.
Even while the rockets are
love to hear it. Immense potential. That's from VP of Neutrons, Sean.
Still, but one thing you mentioned was an acquisition in Munich, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, and also how much you expect acquisition to make up part of the growth story going forward.
Yeah, so in general, Pete and I, you can never count on acquisitions to drive your growth, because acquisitions are just a culmination of really fortunate events coming together. And you can't plan for that. So we're always looking, we know we want this capability or this functionality or this exposure to a market. And so your baseline plan is always just do it yourself. And very fortunately, because Pete is such an engineer, like he's an engineer's engineer, we don't have to buy stuff.
Yeah.
So it becomes a much more liberating thing, and you can be much more choosy when you basically say, hey, okay, well, we need the technology, but it'll take us maybe 6 months longer and maybe be 10 million more of P&L burn to do it organically, but then we don't have to spend $200 million and give it to a bunch of VCs and founders. So we tend to kind of do a mix. If you look at Space Systems, some of the initial pieces were inorganic through acquisitions, but we've grown those in a lot of organic ways as well. Like we've added, radios, for example, and batteries, and all these, composite. A lot of these different things were developed in-house. Right. The whole satellite manufacturing business.
It's a great point that they continue to scale those businesses after they acquire them. Just thinking about the CHIPS Act with Solero, kind of expanding that solar manufacturing business. Of course, they really scaled up the new 5 Newton meter reaction wheels with PS Sinclair, I think it was reaction wheels. I always sometimes get those mixed up. And yeah, all those businesses that they buy, they don't just sit on them. They continue to scale them as well as develop some capabilities in-house. Like we heard about the thruster that Peter kind of thought, well, they can develop it themselves as opposed to paying and buying another company. So interesting stuff there.
Was grown in-house. We didn't buy a company to do that. So I think we find that balance. So I'd say, will M&A be a continuing focus for us? Absolutely. Yeah. I think when you talk about recent deals, so Geost is a deal that we just closed. In fact, we were there earlier this week meeting with the team, great team. And then we're hoping to close, by the end of the year, before the end of the year, this Mynaric acquisition, which does optical terminals to allow constellations.
I don't know if we heard that by the end of the year number before, so that's good to hear. It looks like they're looking to close Mynaric before the end of the year, so that's like within 4 months. Pretty excited to see that one close, obviously. It's a big up-and-coming business, and we've seen some articles recently that they've kind of turned around their production lines pretty well. They were having a lot of trouble building out those optical terminals for the SDA constellation and others, and then good news in some articles that they've really been able to scale up production pretty significantly over the past few months.
Satellites to communicate with each other on orbit, and that's got a team of around 300 people in Munich. Will give us a really, really helpful footprint in Europe.
Would that be the first European business?
First European business for us, which actually opens up a lot of opportunities, because if you don't have a European kind of development and manufacturing presence, you get boxed out of a lot of ESA program opportunities. In fact, if they have any choice, they're going to use European content. So now we're considered European to a certain extent because of that footprint there, and that means we can not only sell the Mynaric stuff, but all the other Rocket Lab's suite of stuff as quasi-European.
Revenues.
That's really interesting. I do wonder how much of an edge it really gives them. Like, I don't know. I feel like the ESA or European governments, they're looking to buy reaction wheels. They might say, okay, sure, Rocket Lab is Mynaric, but these reaction wheels are built in Long Beach or wherever. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe that is the foot in the door, all they really need to be able to sell into Europe.
Well, there's profit and then there's cash flow. Yep. And I think in our case, they're kind of detached, at least for now. Getting Neutron's first launch off is really key to getting to adjusted EBITDA positive. So what people kind of look at as P&L positivity. It's going to take a little bit long because we've been having this huge bubble of R&D spend that's been pushing us in a loss position for the last several years because of Neutron. Once it goes into production, then it becomes cost of sales and there's revenue associated with it. So your P&L looks much, much better. Cash flow will be a little bit different because we continue to invest in, like right now as we speak, we're ordering the long lead parts for Tails 2, 3, right? We're building out the barge, which isn't required for the first flight. Yep. So that scaling infrastructure is going to continue to be a demand on cash through 2026. So I'd expect cash flow positivity no earlier than, I would say, early 27.
Right.
But then
that's a good number to keep in mind for our DCF models when I revisit my spreadsheet soon. I think I did have around something like 26 or very early 27 to get net income positive, but I'll definitely have to double check that and keep what he said here in mind.
That's when P&L and cash flow start to merge more together because you will have passed that investment, infrastructure investment bubble.
At the moment.
Just one more point, though. I do think even getting adjusted EBITDA positive could be a pretty big catalyst for the stock when that happens. And that should obviously be a little bit sooner than, net income positive.
So we're kind of moving from that kind of child, kind of youngster phase to now kind of becoming a self-sustaining entity. That's one of the commitments that you make when you go public, is that you're going to make returns for your shareholders, not just on, and of course, share prices can move based on macro conditions, speculation, all kinds of waves, but ultimately to build an enduring, solid kind of financial base, you got to become profitable. But we're also making sure that we make the right kind of initial investments so that we're teed up for that long-term growth. Yet you endure some relatively intense short-term pain for the long-term gain, and I think we've endured quite a bit of pain, over the last, certainly 4 years as being a public company to make sure that we are positioned to grow.
One thing into satellite constellations, this is another place you'll be competing with SpaceX. So, how much room you think there is for that?
So constellations, it's a broad umbrella, right? So it's basically, we think of it as an application. So what are the functions that are going to be done from space that, delivering services and data? And so you can think it'll range from things that are very well known, like if, for example, you've got things like Starlink now delivering broadband to consumers, right? Mm-hmm. You have direct to mobile, right, where people now directly connecting their cell phones from space-based constellation assets. You have Earth observation, like taking images for various purposes, whether that's for weather or for national security or for commercial applications. So there are many, many, many dozens of these vertical applications from space. Mm-hmm. And so, competing with SpaceX, the question would be, well, are we really going to develop a constellation to do fixed broadband to the consumer masses? I don't know. Hard to say, right? I think we're not going to get into an application where we're going to be at such a huge capital disadvantage. And if you look at right now, like that fixed broadband is really, you've got Elon and you've got Kuiper coming in, right? So you got Starlink and Kuiper. So we got to be careful. Like we've always been very careful about how we attack a market. And, do you want to go head on with somebody who's got unlimited capital? And, well, sometimes you do if you really think your technology is that differentiated. But there's a whole bunch of factors that go in. So will we have an application? I believe we'll have an application, in focus in the not too distant future. But we're going to have to be very cognizant of what's real practical. Because back to your point of profitability, right? Like Pete and I always have this little bit of a tug of war from time to time about,
healthy tension.
Yeah, healthy tension about like leaning forward to invest for the future versus how do we get to profitability sooner, right? Yeah. And so clearly embarking on an application, unless you acquire somebody who's already got that momentum, if you do it organically, that can be a fairly expensive proposition.
What was your background before?
A lot of interesting talk there about the future Rocket Lab application and, their space infrastructure, talking about not wanting to go head to head with people who have way more money like Elon and Jeff Bezos when it comes to broadband internet. It did feel like he kind of was specifically referring to like the broadband direct to like an antenna for home Wi-Fi use and not the direct to device perhaps. But interesting context for what they might go after when it comes to their own application. I think I've heard some rumblings before of them looking into like 5G NTN stuff, but there's lots of different options out there. I do think it'll be communications and not Earth observation based. So maybe like some kind of IoT type stuff, or there's lots of different options. It'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Growth has not been lacking growth, and I love growth. That's kind of what attracted me to Rocket Lab. Is like there's no question that the growth opportunities here are staggering. I mean, when I think about like again having been at Intel when the internet was just taking off, Broadcom when that was proliferating, and all the different connectivity technologies. I've never been in a company with more opportunities coming. Like it's a target-rich environment. Like
Amazing.
I mean, some of the places you're hunting for, hey, where can we go to find that next little bit of growth? That's not our problem. We have opportunities coming in everywhere.
You like to hear it, obviously, from a CFO. Obviously, executives always like to talk up their own companies, but I do think there's a bit of honesty there as well.
The pressure is real. I mean, there's so many people that own the stock, and I know both Adam and I feel a deep sense of responsibility to do right by the shareholders and create.
And we appreciate it. I'm sure me and several others retail shareholders did express that sentiment to him when we saw him at this event. So, but nice to know they're always thinking about us shareholders when they do things.
Value, and we've been lucky to date to create some value, and people are just so nice. But it all comes down to execution, and every person in this company understands that. A lot of the company are stockholders themselves, so we all feel it and we all push and work super hard.
The talk going on at the moment is about Golden Dome.
Golden Dome,
And I was just wondering, like, is Rocket Lab got a front seat in this sort
Yeah,
of
absolutely. I
conversations?
mean, so the Golden Dome is a missile defense system. So if another country launches a missile attack, this is supposed to detect it and eliminate the threat. That's a very difficult thing to do. If you've got a missile, being launched from the other side of the world and coming in, it's a very difficult thing to try and first detect and then neutralize. So and a lot of that capability, especially the sensing capability, is in space. So,
not to mention they just acquired a company that has space-based sensors. So, that's a little interesting.
We think we're well positioned to be a really good contractor and provider to that.
And
to
does
that
Neutron
program.
likely be a big part of that as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of launch that needs a lot of spacecraft and satellites that need to be launched. So so Neutron will be a part of that. We have our HASTE launch vehicle that's doing hypersonic suborbital tests. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think we feel about the December deadline that the governor put out there
it's
today.
a deadline, all right, but no, it's good. We're aggressively marching towards it, and if there's any team that can do it, it's Rocket Lab. So we'll get it done.
And that's us.
I think Sean sounds a little bit more optimistic even than Peter. What do you think? Maybe Peter's trying to, be more conservative, and Sean's feeling pretty good about the situation. I don't know. I kind of like that answer. I guess we'll have to wait and see. That is it for Sharesies, guys. Once again, if you want to check out the full interview, it's well worth a watch, and I did link it down below. All right, so next up we have a clip of Peter Beck talking to NASA Spaceflight. The entire interview is quite long, and it's available on YouTube. I'll link that down below in the description as well if you're interested in seeing the whole thing. But we're just going to take some highlights, and I'll give you my take on what is being said as we hear things that I find particularly interesting.
An exciting time for Rocket Lab, I think it's fair to say.
Oh, thanks very much, Ryan. It's great to talk to you. And I've got to pull you up again. I'm sorry. Last time you had me on here, no picture of Electron flying on your opening credits. And here we go again. When am I going to get Electron on the opening credits?
I will bring that up with Mr. Jack Beyer, who is in charge of the intro. That you are not the first guest to mention things that should be in the intro that are not in the intro. I will put it that way. But yeah,
second most frequently launched rocket in the world. Come on, guys.
Jack and Max were invited down to New Zealand. I can't remember now, nearly a couple of years ago. So you're right, we do need to get some Electron footage in the intro. But
I mean, it's just kind of funny. I think it's good. It goes to show Peter seems to be in a pretty good mood. So obviously feeling good about, the company and all that, or he wouldn't be quite so chipper. At least I don't think. And it's a good point. Why wouldn't Electron be in their intro? They've got other rockets going on in there. Electron launches second most frequently.
I'm wondering if Jake Egan, our wonderful producer in the background, can bring up some of the images of that launch pad, which you opened officially a few weeks ago, because we've been getting a lot of questions in chat and in the member Discord, because you've got a wonderful, swanky looking pad, wonderful, huge water tower, but your launch mount is static and there isn't a huge tower. So everyone is wondering, how are you going to be stacking the rocket on the pad? Is Rocket Lab in the market for a big crawler crane, or how are you guys going to be working that one out?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So this is kind of phase one of the pad, and then there's phase two. And the kind of design requirements for Neutron is never break it over. So we want to launch it vertically, we want to land it vertically, we want to integrate vertically, and fly again vertically. So when we sort of stood back at the very design point of the vehicle and said, okay, what are the con-ops that suck? What are the con-ops that take time? What are the con-ops that add cost and risk? And it's always breaking it over, right? So stage kind of phase one is, we crane it on, that's fine. Stage two, there's a rollover gantry there that enables us to pick it and place.
Okay, so they still are doing the rollover gantry. I was wondering about that because it seemed like it was in the original renders, but haven't seen any sign of it. So I guess that'll be coming in stage two. Good to get the context on that.
And then ultimately integrate in that rollover gantry. And that just means that the vehicle never ever needs to go horizontal. And I mean, it's landed vertically, it's launched vertically, it's shipped vertically, and then it's just a whole nother operation you don't need to do.
And speaking of the different stages, we're seeing there that picture of stage 2. It's within stage 1 because Neutron is it's not a traditional one stage stacked atop another stage stacked atop another stage, right? Like everything, it's really, if you were trying to describe Neutron to somebody who isn't really that in tune with rockets, it's like, well, they've got the fairings, but the fairings are attached to stage 1, but then there's stage 2 inside stage. So I'm just wondering if you could give us a little rundown as to why, because between the last interview and now, it was revealed on your website that stage 1 is actually going to be kind of in 2 modules, which are then going to be connected. So I'm just wondering if you could give us a little insight into how that assembly process is actually going to take place, because it's very untraditional. We haven't really seen anything like this before.
Yeah. And look, this all comes from the starting point of reusability, right? Cost and reusability. What are the, if you've got to go and fish out fairings out of the ocean, that's just another ship and another process and another refurb and so on and so forth. So the best thing to do is to not throw your fairings away. So we came up with the Hungry Hippo fairing that we kind of lovingly named it, where, the fairings remain attached to stage 1. And then if you do the economics around total reusability of stage 1 and stage 2, it's kind of, for a 13-ton vehicle, it's kind of, 50-50 whether or not the reusability of stage 2 actually pencils out. Now, if you went in the traditional kind of sense, it probably does. But if you kind of think of
that's kind of interesting, given the fact that they didn't go for stage 2 reusability. I thought he'd be out there saying stage 2 reusability for a vehicle this size doesn't make sense. But he's still saying it for a 13-ton vehicle, it could potentially make sense. So that's kind of interesting. And then that begs the question, well, why did they decide not to pursue that if it can pencil out? Interesting decision making there. Can't wait to hear more about this one.
A little bit outside the box, then it gets really kind of blurry. And stage 2 is one of those things where it is, in Neutron it is disposable, so it has to be incredibly low cost, but ironically it has to be the highest performing stage. So that you've got kind of an oxymoron there where you need something super high performance and super cheap. And the way you kind of do that, in the way we approach this, is that you take stage 2 out of the load path. Because if you look at the load through the upper stage, the dominant load, there's obviously the pressure load, but the dominant load is the bending moments. And if you can take those loads out, then you can basically make almost a balloon tank of carbon. So stage 2 is kind of hung like a sack in stage 1, where there's no structural load path through it. So the tank is super light, and because it's super light, it means there's almost no carbon in it. Because there's no carbon in it, it means it's super cheap to make, and the material cost is very, very low. And because there's no mass to it, it's really high performance. So it's really about optimizing the disposal element to be just ridiculously cheap. And we think the economics in this approach are very, very favorable. So that's kind of how we end up with stage 2 on the inside.
So I think the economics of making this second stage as cheap and light and high performance as possible are better than trying to reuse the second stage. Just following up on my previous comments, that's kind of an interesting strategy, very different from when you look at what Stoke is doing, obviously, and SpaceX, but that's obviously way bigger. So interesting strategy there. He did say that stage 1 is 70% of the cost, so that still leaves up to 30% for stage 2, right? Interesting discussion. Love to ask him more about the decision making behind this.
And there's lots of tension within the company about can we fly more faster, obviously, but sort of holding firm on that one, because it's we proved with Electron, you fly one, you learn a tremendous amount. You just need that iteration time to roll all those learnings in, and to fly more than 3 the next year is kind of unrealistic, really. Even if you do have the production rate to support it, you want to take advantage of those learnings. Because the worst thing you can do is put a vehicle in production that's really tough to produce, that's got some really nasty elements to it. Then you just battle with that for forever and ever. And I think, we've learned a lot of these lessons with Electron because, Electron now, it's flight 70 completed and flight 71 on a pad. Like the inertia to change when you get that far in is really high. So nobody wants to change anything because it's proven and it works and all the rest of it. So the time to get your change done and your block upgrades are really early on. So allowing that kind of time to get those block upgrades means that ultimately, a couple of years down the track, you end up with a much, much better vehicle.
Makes sense. It's a little disappointing, I guess. Obviously, I'm sure shareholders would love to see the revenue pouring in from like 1 launch, then 5, then 10 or something, or even more extreme, like 1, then 20 or whatever. But yeah, I guess leaving time to incorporate what you've learned into the next version and make those changes so that when you do get the mass production going or, really get things rolling, that you have the best possible vehicle that doesn't really have any difficult elements, as he said.
Thing I know that is also one of your favorites, so to speak, has been marine assets. I mean, now we obviously have return on investment becoming a reality here. So Supersonic Retro Propulsion is asking, do marine assets still suck?
They do. I'm sorry, but they do. They just, you put them in the water and they literally just start melting away in front of your eyes. So now they are a necessary evil, I have to admit. So, we have our barge under construction, return on investment right now. And so that is a large piece of steel. And, look, there's just too much, too much penalty to return to launch site. I mean, so you end up landing on a barge. But yes, no.
It's kind of a switch from when they originally announced Neutron. Return to launch site was kind of like the primary go-to option that they were kind of pushing. But yeah, I guess they've just found from customers and people that they really want the full 13 tons that requires a downrange landing on a barge.
So it's a definitely love-hate relationship for sure.
Because speaking of return on investment, that is currently under construction, but we have seen in the past some companies are utilizing more than one landing vessels. So is that something in the future for Neutron? Are you going to end up with a fleet of barges, or have you not looked that far forward yet?
Now you're going to have a fleet of marine assets. It's even worse. No, we'll try. I mean, look, as cadence increases, we've got a pretty slick con ops here that hopefully we don't have to have too many marine assets to meet what we need to meet. But there is a point in scaling where we have so much launch and the transit time to get back is insufficient to allow for the launch cadence. So unfortunately, there may need to be more marine assets in time. But at the moment, we're really focused on the con ops and that barge has 1 megawatt worth of electrical power to drive the electric thrusters. And the electric thrusters lift out and pivot out, so we can boogie that thing along, because you don't want to have to wait for ages to get your rocket back. So we took some learnings from others on that one and made a speedy barge, not a sluggish barge. The design point for the vehicle was 24 hours. So for the same vehicle, so that was the design point. Now, I appreciate that's somewhat of an unrealistic design point, but sometimes you have to create a set of requirements that are completely unrealistic to get something good. So everything was driven off that requirement. Right back to like propellant selection. One of the key reasons why we went for methane and oxygen was simply because of that 24-hour turnaround, because we have a lot of experience obviously with LOX-Kero, and you just can't get around the fact that you get sooting on that LOX-Kero propulsion cycle. So you'd have to do quite a lot of cleaning, especially of turbines and whatnot and stuff to be able to recycle an engine. Whereas you run a Methalox engine and it's still shiny on the inside after you finish a full pull. So
24 hours turnaround. I don't know if I've heard that before, but that sounds great. Like, obviously, it may not be feasible when you're talking about landing on a barge, bringing it all the way back and getting things ready to go. But having the vehicle capable of that, and when you do eventually get into downrange landings, that's awesome.
It's just those kind of high level requirements where we're just locked in day one, and they drove all of these design decisions. Same with the fairings, right? You can't be messing around horizontal, breaking a rocket over and integrating fairings on. Like, you just need to zip them open, drop your second stage with your payload integrated into the top, and zip them closed and be ready to go. So that's the requirements. Now, whether or not we ever achieve that is a different kind of question. But certainly, there's nothing that's been designed and incorporated into the vehicle today that won't allow that technically to happen. Now, whether like I say, whether we can is a different kettle of fish.
And one more point on Neutron. Speaking to the future, you spoke earlier about block upgrades. Is there anything already in your minds about what could come after the first few flights of Neutron, or are you holding back any kind of Block 2 or anything like that until you've actually flown a vehicle, gotten that data, and have an experience of what it is like to fly a vehicle of that size?
Yeah. Well, so we're following pretty much the identical path we did with Electron, and for Block 1, if you will, we have high margins. So we reserve a lot of payload margin for kind of putting bounds around anything. And when you start with a vehicle design, you create all your Monte Carlos, and some of those Monte Carlos are unbounded until you actually go and fly. And over time, you understand the performance of the vehicle, propellant residuals, all of these kinds of things. And our approach has always been we just sort of trim those down over time. And if you look at Electron's payload performance, it just goes up and up and up and up over time. There's no kind of fundamental, like, we have to go back and redo this kind of thing. But as you're building the first of something, you kind of learn, well, man, that really sucked building that. If we change the design of that, then that will be way easier to build and way easier to maintain. And you think you can be good out of the chute by designing it, but the reality is that something on CAD versus something that you're crawling around, in reality, is always very different. So, as I said before, you want to leave that time to roll those things in. So there's no like major kind of block upgrades planned. We'll always start at conservative points everywhere. That includes in propulsion. So the Archimedes engine will be starting at a very conservative design point, even more conservative than even though it's a very conservative engine, it will start even more conservatively, and will start to stretch its legs over time. That's just kind of our approach.
Sounds like there could be some performance improvements in the future then, without major changes. They're just being very conservative on like how much propellant they'll need and that kind of thing. So I know Electron historically did go up, and even I think the high point was the Capstone mission, where they somehow managed to get like 320 kilograms. And technical, at least in their data sheet or whatever, their technical limit is 300. But maybe Neutron has some room to move upwards in terms of its capacity too.
Has interplanetary ambitions coming up shortly. Fingers crossed. We have your private mission to Venus. I was just wondering if you could give us a little update of how things are coming along on that front at the moment.
Yeah, well, historically, I think as we've pointed out, that's always been a nights and weekends kind of project. And unfortunately, the amount of nights and weekends we're trying to get a launch vehicle to the pad right now are consumed. So we haven't made tremendous progress on that. However, that should be changing shortly. That project will get a bit of a boost. We'll be able to move forward on that and in more of a formal way, which will be great.
I wonder why the project's getting a boost. Maybe it just means like once Neutron's done, they can, or I guess it won't be done, but once they get their first launch off, they can work on it, or some new investor helping out. I don't know.
But we have the re-entry capsule is complete. The TPS is complete, and the instrument is complete, which are the long poles. And now with Neutron coming online, we no longer need to try and cram it into an electron. So so the aperture for the spacecraft is kind of opened up a little bit. So that enables us to do more things and have more kind of more scope on that spacecraft. So
so it's a night and weekends project. Do you have a net date you're currently working towards, or is it just it'll happen when it will happen?
Well, there's some good opportunities, obviously for planetary alignment in next year. So it'd be great to see if we could get one get it away next year. But I'm also just realistic. The amount of stuff that we've got on that's real paying work is really high. So so that always kind of takes a back seat. But hopefully we can improve that shortly.
There we go. So maybe next year. Obviously, no promises, but that would be really cool to see that mission fly in 2026.
Elsewhere. So, with the recent kind of discovery of some interesting rocks on Mars, I think it just highlights the fact that, man, we just need to get there and answer this question and bring those samples home. So I think it's tremendously important. I think there's probably half a dozen Nobel Peace Prizes just sitting on the surface of Mars right now. The scientific discovery that's available through those samples is enormous. And I think people mischaracterize those samples as just some rocks from Mars. They're not. They're like carefully selected scientific treasure troves that not only will give us some insight and discovery into Mars, but the universe. So I don't know, just having them just sitting there on the surface ready to go just seems just so frustrating. We just need to get them back here to Earth and get them in a lab and start unlocking some of these secrets of both Mars and the universe. I think that's just really, really important.
Why are you so interested in the MTO? I mean, why MTO? Why are you so interested in it? And why are you why are you dedicating so much to your current public outreach to advertising MTO?
Well, so there's a couple of things there. So firstly, as you pointed out, MTO was part of our Mars sample return architecture, and nothing happens without communications, great communications. And obviously, this administration has a strong desire to put a footprint on Mars, and you're not going to put a footprint on Mars until you have high bandwidth, reliable communications, prolific communications on the surface of Mars. The saying "Pix or it didn't happen" is incredibly relevant here. So that needs to be that reliable infrastructure. So I know a lot of people have given up on Mars sample return. I'll never give up on Mars sample return. So getting one critical element there is really important, and the MTO is a critical element to Mars sample return. It's also equally as critical element for human landings on the planet, and it has to be there before the human landing on the planet anyway.
And very briefly, I believe we have one more question from the chat, so I'll throw it back over to Sawyer, who has been keeping an eye, reading all the questions and comments. What have you got, Sawyer?
Yeah, definitely. So PM Rusty saying Rocket Lab has indicated they may look at partnerships into the foray into commercial constellations for their own space applications. Are there any partnership ideas under consideration? And is that still something that you're looking into, is being able to kind of do that joint infrastructure to better benefit Rocket Lab's Mars endeavors?
Is it that question specific just to Mars, or is it specific to like in general?
It was originally for Mars, but if there's
Mars,
other...
yeah.
That question to me sounds like it was not about Mars, but anyway, I guess we'll hear what he has to say.
If there's other ones too that you want to mention, you can.
No, it'll get me in trouble. So no, from a Mars perspective, obviously we'll partner with folks like JPL who have a lot of experience operating in Mars and so those kinds of things. But with respect to kind of other commercial entities, no, I think we've got everything we need to be able to do that particular project.
And that message said that we will, like, as a confirmation, before the first launch of Neutron, we will make sure there is an electron launch in the NSF intro. So hopefully that will be satisfactory to your desire to get some Rocket Lab action in the NSF intro.
There you go. There you go. Personally, I think it reflects more poorly on you guys than me, but there you go.
Well, thank you very much. We always appreciate viewer feedback, so thank you very much, Peter Beck. Thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been wonderful talking to you as always. It's it's brilliant to see what you guys are up to right now over at Rocket Lab, and fingers crossed it's a very exciting next couple of years coming up.
Awesome. Thanks very much, guys. Always love talking to you. It's awesome.
Fun guy, yeah, fun chat. So that one, a little bit more technical, still very interesting, not really touching on stocks or financials or anything like that so much, but I think there's still a lot of interesting info in there, and I certainly enjoyed watching the whole thing. Hopefully you did as well. So sorry once again for the speakers getting cut off at times in the video of that second interview. They keep moving them around on me, but I did think both were quite interesting. Let me know any takeaways you had down below. I've already shared my thoughts with you, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're not a subscriber, I would highly appreciate any new subscriptions. It helps out so much with the channel. Hope you guys have a great day and a great rest of the week. I'll see you soon for the next video. Bye for now.